today's podcast, I'm asking you, do you know the 3 areas of your life that need attention now so that you can prevent memory loss later? Are you being consistent in your actions in these 3 areas? And I'm going to add a 4th one, which I think covers pretty much across all territories. It's an area that's often overlooked and underappreciated, and most likely will surprise you. So let's get to it.
This is the Memory Health Made Easy podcast, the show where you learn practical tips and experts share advice on what you can do to boost your brain span to match your lifespan. Now to the host of the show, David Norris.
Hello and welcome to the Memory Health Made Easy podcast. If you don't know who I am, my name is David Norris, and I'm on a mission to reach more, to serve more, and to create more memory health in people. Right now, one person every 3 seconds is diagnosed with dementia across this globe. In the year 2015, almost 50 million people worldwide were living with dementia. That number will almost double every 20 years, and by 2050, we'll see around about 130 million plus people living with this disease. The costs are staggering. Dementia is a US $1 trillion industry, and in the next 10 years will double to a $2 trillion industry. Essentially, when you put it on the map, it's the 18th largest economy in the world. It leaves no population alone. In the Americas, over 10 million people. In Europe, 10.5. In Africa, 4 million. And in combined Asia, we're looking at almost 23 million people living with dementia. But I want to be clear, memory loss is not part of aging. It does not have to be our brain destiny. And there's another way we can think about our brain and aging. The brain is beautiful as it responds to the threats and challenges, the opportunities that are around it, and the lack thereof. So if we've got stress, poor diet, we're exposing ourselves to an environment full of toxins and artificial light, maybe we've got less sleep, and our exercise regime has really gone downhill. These things and more can impact on our memory and brain health. So we can prevent cognitive decline. We can reverse cognitive decline should we tackle these things appropriately and in a timely manner. We do not want to let the horse out of the gate and let it bolt down the road. So much so that for many of my clients that I've seen in the past suffer dramatically from severe memory loss. We do not want that brain destiny, and today's podcast goes to the heart of this matter. I should say that memory loss isn't an aging issue. Anywhere between 35% and 50% of people will experience subjective cognitive impairment. That is, they are self-assessing themselves that their memory performance isn't as good as it should be. Now, whilst naming a disease gives it a hat, so to speak, an umbrella of which to hang symptoms and phenomena, it really doesn't help us. So today's podcast, we're looking at some factors that can really shift the needle in terms of our memory health and our brain fitness. So rather than wait for the inevitable end, let's start to treat health and wellness rather than treat sickness. That's where our energy is best spent. So let's get into it. How are you moving? Are you raising your heart rate with physical exercise? Are you going, as I call it, to the movement buffet? Think of it like there's a platter of opportunities there. Are you going to the buffet of opportunities with regards to how you move your body? So what's on this veritable buffet of movement opportunity? We don't necessarily need to go to the gym here. We're talking about all the variety of exercises that are out there, from things that really push the fun button, maybe are exciting, even meditative and relaxing, as long as it's engaging the whole body. But we can perhaps break it down into a couple of buckets. Those that raise our heart rate, those things that challenge our balance. Perhaps we can also consider it as those things that require effort and force, our resistance exercises. And lastly, we could probably put it in the high intensity, that is the short, sharp, intensive type exercises. Now, what I encourage many of my clients is to think about how they're hitting all those components throughout a week. Where after some exposure of exercise, around that moderate to high intensity where we can, high intensity is not just going to be running and sprinting, but also think about some of those resistance exercises where you're placing your body under strain and it is requiring a real demand from your heart and overall body. We do know that with regards to exercise, it's providing all those triggers to improve the miracle grow, or what we call brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a key part of the chemical environment helping our brain adapt and change. What we know also is that exercise doesn't appear to have an impact on one cognitive area. However, we do see the vascular or blood supply changes that are associated with exercise. It's clear that movement is a really important and essential thing to keeping our brains fit and healthy. It helps improve our blood flow, helps our body regulate sugar, and we are also seeing changes in our brain structure, particularly the things associated with balance and resistance type training. It can help our mood and improve that sense of ease. Activities like yoga, dancing, swimming, running, things that are going to move and challenge the whole body coordination are going to pay off. When I mention dancing, in most presentations, there's going to be a few gentlemen and women who slide down against their partner and have a few rib-tickling moments next to them to say, "See, I told you so." Dancing offers a fantastic way to challenge our ability to learn new movements, challenge our coordination, raise our heart rate. Do it in time where we've got sensory stimuli such as the music, where our partner is. We're getting information about where our joints are in space, such as proprioception. All these things add up to, I guess, a stacking of increasing complexity and challenge for our brain. And what do we know already is that challenge, novelty, newness is fantastic for our brain and particularly for neuroplasticity. When we look at the benefits of exercise, this really goes to mitigating those risk factors that we highlighted in episode 2. Episode 2, we covered off some of those metabolic risk factors associated with memory health and cognitive decline. Exercise is a powerful tool to start combating the impact and those risk factors associated with changes in our metabolic function. Now, if you're sitting there listening to this right now and you're scratching your head and saying, "Dave, well, I haven't exercised for a long time. What should I do?" Just start moving is probably number one. Think about how you can change your home environment, your work environment, or your daily routine where you're increasing your exposures for movement. Aim for 1 hour each day of regular movement. If you can raise the heart rate a little bit, do so. If you're concerned about that and you've got medical conditions, certainly have a chat with your local medical practitioner to get the advice and clearance about what type of exercise and where to start. Working with an exercise physiologist, physiotherapist, going down to the gym and seeing somebody who's skilled and aware on how to grade up exercises would be also a great place to start. If I was to leave you with one nugget, just get moving. Or to borrow from Dora, just keep swimming, just keep moving. Yeah, well, maybe not. I'm in the Dora phase at the moment anyway. So my challenge to you is, what are you going to do today? What are you going to aim for this week around movement? Where can you start? Can you buddy up with somebody else? Is there something in your interest, or you've got that curiosity about, I wouldn't mind trying blah. Might be rock climbing, might be anything. Whatever it is, put it on the register as a goal to do, inquire more about it, and just keep moving. Number 2 on the list is having food front of mind, eating a nutrient-dense diet, a diet full of whole foods where it's predominantly vegetables and fruits with meat as a condiment, thinking that is a delicacy or as a side meal, not the hero of the main dish. Think rich, beautiful colours in your fruit and vegetables, trying to eat diverse colours in your day. Greens, reds, oranges, yellows, whites, etc. are all powerful phytonutrients that are essential for our brain health. Eating fats from vegetables, nuts and seeds rather than being the source from meat and processed fats, such as processed margarines and spreads. Consider sourcing those good fats from nuts, seeds, olives, like olive oils, avocados, and also from fish. It sounds simple when we put it that way, but when you think about 9 out of 10 chronic diseases are associated with the actions that we take and what we put on our plate, how much we eat, and how little amount of colour there is on that plate will determine your risk for acquiring chronic disease, and memory health and memory loss is one of those conditions. Often we're asked about fat. Fat makes up a huge portion of our brain. In fact, around 60% of our brain is fat. And that's why we see that low-fat diets can cause fatigue and changes in our memory health performance. It might even affect mood swings or be associated with brain fog. Often we're asked about meat, and I've already referenced that meat as a condiment, and this aligns up a lot with the evidence associated with the Mediterranean diet, the Mind diet, and the work of international experts such as Dr. Walter Longo, Dr. Dean Ornish, and Dr. Dale Bredesen, for example. Protein is very important and is a staple part as a macronutrient in our diet. We need our carbohydrates, sugars, we need our proteins, and we need our fats. And the current guide around protein consumption, particularly if you're under 65 years of age, is to have around about 30 grams of protein per meal. How you source that, whether it be vegetable sources or meat sources, the jury is certainly starting to point towards more vegetable consumption than meat, but meat is certainly part of our diet. Further things you can think about here are eating seasonally, eating ancestrally, so that is what your grandparents ate, as well as eating organically, with some of the evidence pointing to the toxicity of those chemicals, the pesticides and herbicides used with treatment of our food. Incidentally, also, when we're thinking about meat consumption, considering those that are hormone additive free, with one of the large additives being antibiotics. Sadly, in Australia, according to Professor Phyllis Jacker, we have the highest consumption of antibiotics in the world, and that is not things that we've taken from our GP, but more so what's in our food chain. What's exciting around the world of food right now is that we are starting to see the emergence of nutrition as a treatment method or a nutraceutical. And this follows some of the work of some of the people that I've already mentioned in this podcast, but Dr. Longo, Dr. Sachin Panda, Dr. Dale Bredesen, who talk about fasting, time-restricted feeding, the impact on our circadian rhythms, longevity, cancer, diabetes, and neurodegenerative conditions. Professor Phyllis Jacker of the Mood and Food Center, as well as Dr. Drew Ramsey, have spoken and written extensively around nutrition and mood and our mental health. Dr. Dean Ornish, for example, has written extensively around diet and lifestyle choices associated with prostate and cardiac health. Dr. Terry Walls and Professor George Jelinek have written extensively around their personal battles with multiple sclerosis and devised lifestyle and nutritional interventions to address the disease. The emergence of lifestyle medicine and functional medicine goes beyond the naming and diagnosis to a more holistic framework, and we can start to see the echoes of this observation through the research which is emerging around treating nutrition as an intervention for specific chronic diseases and risk factors associated with specific chronic diseases like neurodegeneration. Now, if you're sitting there going, great, Dave, where do I start with all this? Well, I think you can come back to the simple rules at the beginning, which is eat whole foods-based diet, predominantly vegetables with meat as a condiment. Eat lots of colourful nutrients in your diet. Make sure that you source good fats from vegetables, and if you've got the choice or you're eating meat, choose grass-fed or free-range meat that have no hormones or additives. If you're needing specific train tracks to stay on, so to speak, then think about the Mediterranean diet as a good guide nutritionally around what you might choose as a shopping list option. Now, the purpose of this podcast really isn't about promoting a particular fad or a particular style of eating. Nutrition is a choice for life, and the whole premise of the Memory Health Made Easy show is to help us move to a better place in making choices on a daily basis, which reduces our risk for memory loss. What we put into our bodies is critical to this, and so taking steps today will reduce your risk. So my action challenge to you is, what are you going to do? What could you take out of your existing diet? Maybe a really nice and easy place to start. What could you introduce? What could you explore? And this might be a nice point to think about the next week ahead or even the next month ahead. I'd love to hear how you go with this. Third in the list is about stress and rest. Don't wait for the red light to come on. Don't wait until you break. What are your stress indicators? Well, what we know about stress and our brain and memory health is that stress hormones or stress chemicals are associated with a change in our hippocampus performance, meaning our hippocampus is part of the units of our brain associated with memory. Stress hormones damage the ability of the hippocampus to perform well and has been associated with early stages of Alzheimer's. Don't get me wrong, we need stress to be present in our body to help us fight or flight, but it's the chronic exposure of stress where we start to see the impact on our cognitive fitness. So being mindful of your stress indicators, which may be a sense of overwhelm, it might be a physical reaction, it might be a churning in the tummy, it might be that sense of so much busy that you've got no time for yourself. We also can see that stress can impact the quality of our sleep or our ability to get to sleep. And sleep deprivation is another variable, another factor, which is super important for our brain health. During sleep, our brain cleaners, the glial cells, go through and help clean up the waste associated with day-to-day activity. It helps clear out those amyloid beta, which are associated with the early stages and onset of dementia, particularly of Alzheimer's type. During sleep, the glial cells also trim and prune how our brain is wired up, how it connects. It's like getting rid of the weeds and the bushes that aren't relevant to performing at our best. You would have remembered in episode 3, we spoke about how our memory can be improved by practicing a specific exercise. And what they found with specific exercise is that if you did it 1 to 2 hours before sleep and having quality sleep, it improved your memory by about 30%. So it goes to reason that sleep is another area critical to leveraging the benefits of stress mitigation strategies, exercise, and eating a nutritious diet. When we think about stress, what activities can you do to reduce your experience of stress? The things that come to mind are reducing your exposure, building practices in your day that help soften the impact of stress, taking a break, slowing down, giving yourself space. Meditation practices such as mindfulness and the work from Jon Kabat-Zinn under the mindful-based stress reduction technique has a sound body of evidence to show its role in helping reduce the stress markers in our body. There are other tools out there as well, like HeartMath, which helps look at our heart rhythms and its indicators for our experiences of stress. Muse is also another headband to help look at the brainwaves associated with a scattered or a busy mind and helping us dial into more of a meditative state. These are some of the tools out there, and I'm not endorsing any of them other than to show you that there are plenty of options. There are also apps. The Smiling Mind is one that comes to mind. Headspace, a paid application, which helps us tap into a more meditative state. The final point that I wanted to make, and I see this as a critical and often overlooked element, is the richness of our social connections. And what does that mean? It's not so much about the number of connections, it's the quality of connections. And if I was to ask you this, and let's just do this as an exercise together. I want you to clear your mind. Now, if you're driving, certainly pay attention to the road. But clear your mind and think about in your time of desperate need, in those dark hours of life, is there somebody you can reach out to that you know who's got your back? That depth of social connection is super important for our cognitive health and well-being. Loneliness, which represents the absence of that depth of quality of connection, is associated with an array of chronic diseases and has been positioned as more deadly than smoking. So when we think about social connection, I like to see it as a wonderful tool to stack on top of all the things that we've spoken about. Let's take, for example, food. Are we eating wholesome, rich, beautiful food in a social way, in a way with others, connected, absent of devices, chucking them or leaving them at the front door? But are we building that relationship around food as well? We can use it as a powerful enabler with movement and exercise. Often our exercise groups represent small tribes we can dive into, and we get great engagement and connection with folk around our interests and our movement benefits. stress and relaxation. Yoga, other forms of practice can be quite a powerful tool when done socially. Coming together in a retreat format is also another way we can connect with others of like mind and start to build and foster and nurture relationships. So I guess in handing over to you, where are you at with your social relationships? Where are you at with feeling that you're deeply connected with somebody or others? If not, what could you do to start to pursue this? What things of interest to you? And are there groups around that interest that you'd start to feel a sense of solidarity and to build and nurture those relationships? These are powerful tools for our cognitive fitness, and overall, it's really positioning our brain and cognitive fitness to last our lifespan. So that's it, guys. This is today's podcast. I hope it has been of help to you. We've covered a fair bit of territory around 3 factors associated with memory health, and I wish that people started them sooner, to do with food, movement, and mood, about our stress, and thinking about the powerful enabler in it all being our social connections, the richness and robustness of those connections with people that we love, admire, and cherish in our lives. I am very grateful for your attention today, and I cherish and I'm kind of grateful, really humbled by you listening to me today, and I'm hoping that you could share this information with as many people as possible. That is one way you can help me, is to share with others so that I can serve more, reach more, and to create more memory health in people. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. I'd love a review, and that would also help us reach more people on iTunes. So again, thank you very much for your attention today, and I am super grateful for you coming by. The purpose of Memory Health Made Easy podcast is to educate and to inform. It is no substitute for professional care by a doctor or qualified professional. This podcast is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or personal professional advice or services. Instead, we would encourage you to discuss your options with a healthcare provider who specializes in your particular needs.